All right. So hi everyone. Today, she's gonna cross in front of the camera. All right. Today, I wanted to talk about the differences between mini Aussies, toy Aussies, and standard Aussies. She's got her ball. You're so distracting. Okay. All right, yeah. So I've gotten a lot of questions about the differences between mini Australian Shepherds and toy Australian Shepherds versus the standard. And so I thought that I would touch on that today. A little disclaimer at the very beginning, this is not to, say that standard Aussies are better than mini Aussies or mini Aussies are better than standard. I don't have any opinion on that matter. It's just kind of to present the information to you guys. So this topic can actually be a bit sensitive for some individuals. I don't really know why, but there is a big hype between standard Australian Shepherd owners and mini Aussie owners on kind of what is considered to be an Australian Shepherd. Basically, in the United States at least, the registry has now become more that mini Aussies are considered to be North American Shepherds. So you might hear the term mini American, and that's actually the same exact thing as a mini Aussie. It's just kind of different terms. It's the same exact animal, just different terms for it. And I don't understand really what the big hype is. I personally am not an individual that is like full on focused on just having a purebred. That's not my main focus. Aspen is not CKC registered or AKC registered at all. She is a purebred standard Australian Shepherd. I don't have any papers for her though, and I could care less about papers. I think the most important thing is a healthy animal. And I think that's kind of what people have had somewhat of an issue with when you minimize the size of a breed. You can run into health complications if it's not done properly. I'm not saying that it can't be done. I definitely think that if you have a veterinarian that is monitoring that breeding and you're downsizing the animal, but you're being respectful and responsible with your breeding, it can be done perfectly fine without a lot of health complications. All right, so the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about different types of Aussies is, of course, the size. So the main difference that you're going to see with a mini Aussie versus a standard Australian Shepherd is, of course, size of the animal. Usually standard Aussies measure between 18 to 24 inches high. A mini Aussie would be classified as less than that. They would be classified between the 18 to about 14 inch range. So that's kind of how you tell, and then anything that's a toy would be 14 inches and under. So when it comes to the differences between them, that's probably the biggest thing, is just size of the animal. When it comes to personality, every single animal is different. So every animal has what's called individual variation. Every animal will present itself in a different way. Now, a lot of mini Aussies and toy Aussies can have the standard behavior that's found in standard Australian Shepherds. You can have a lot of herding behaviors, a lot of nipping, a lot of yipping and barking. It really depends on the animal. So you're really not going to be able to predict as much the behavior that you're going to get. It's more just the size of the animal, really, when it comes to mini versus standard versus toy. I really don't think, behaviorally speaking, that mini Aussies and toy Aussies are going to be extremely different from standard Australian Shepherds. I think that you should probably expect the same energy level and some of the same hurdles that you're going to have to deal with a standard Australian Shepherd. But it is possible to have different breed behaviors introduced into some of the smaller Aussies, toy Aussies especially, because there are going to be different breeds. That's the way that an animal is made smaller. you have to introduce smaller dogs to be able to get that. And so it's perfectly reasonable to expect that your toy Aussie especially may exhibit certain behavioral traits that are somewhat like a Pomeranian or somewhat like a Sheltie or whatever dogs that were introduced into the line that your breeder is using. So basically, the difference in size that you see in a mini Australian Shepherd and a toy Australian Shepherd can be due to two different things. The one thing that it can be due to is the use of smaller standard Australian Shepherds in the breeding line. So you can use runts of the litter that have a smaller height in order to breed in a smaller height into a line of Australian Shepherds. Now, those smaller dogs are technically 100% purebred Australian Shepherds, but the problem is that a lot of other breeds are being introduced to get the smaller height. That isn't necessarily a big problem health-wise if you have a veterinarian that is monitoring the breeding, but there are a lot of bad breeders out there that don't do that, and so that results in animals that are not healthy at all. So the main breeds that are introduced to get a teacup-sized Australian Shepherd, so a very, very small Australian Shepherd, less than 14 inches tall, is basically breeds like Pomeranians, Papillons, Corgis, Shelties, those kind of breeds that are smaller. And that is why when you look at a lot of toy Aussies, a lot of them have very different facial features than regular Australian Shepherds. A lot of them have the coat color. A lot of breeders will select for different eye colors as well as coat colors because those are basically the two things that Aussies are really well known for. But you do have different facial structures based off of the breeds that are introduced. Even though there are some people that are, proponents for just standard Aussies, as well as there are very passionate proponents of mini Aussies, I think that the most important thing is the health of the animal. It really doesn't matter if your animal is mixed with other things, other dogs, dog breeds, whatever. It doesn't really matter as long as your animal is healthy. And so I do believe that mini Aussies and toy Aussies can be made with health in mind as long as the breeder is using a veterinarian while they're breeding, as long as they're consulting with a veterinarian to make sure that certain genetic conditions aren't introduced into their lines. But the big issue is really bad breeding. And you see that with animals that are shrunken down to these kind of smaller standards. There's a lot of genetic issues and health issues that can be associated with making an animal smaller. And the reason for this is because, of course, by doing that, first of all, you're introducing genetic conditions that are predisposed to smaller animals. So things like luxating patellas, so the kneecap. There's a lot of unstable kneecaps in smaller breeds. And you can also introduce issues with birthing in your animal. So you guys know that I worked at vet clinics, and quite a lot of the time, bad breeders would bring in animals that they had bred to animals that were too big for that female dog to handle, and therefore that female dog had huge puppies inside of her and was unable to give birth naturally. So a lot of cesarean sections happen because of people that are breeding two dogs that really don't anatomically fit together very well. If you breed a small Pomeranian to a smaller standard Australian Shepherd and the Pomeranian is the female, that poor doggy is trying to push out a baby that is almost the same size as her, right? So you can have a lot of complications associated with that. But like I said, I think The main thing is just to have a healthy animal. I don't think that it's impossible to have a healthy mini Aussie or a healthy toy Aussie. You just have to be very dedicated to finding the right breeder. For those of you that want to make sure that you have a good breeder, you can do as much research as you want. The more research, the better. But the two things that I would recommend doing is, number one, contact the breeder that you're thinking about and ask them if they are affiliated with a veterinarian. And what I mean by that is that they use a veterinarian consistently as they're having puppies. Ask them if you can contact that veterinarian for a reference. So if you do get permission to contact that veterinarian, I would definitely do so. I would contact that veterinarian and just ask them whether or not they've seen the animals that this breeder is breeding, as well as sometimes veterinarians that are used by the breeder will continue to be used by the people that purchase those animals. And it's quite realistic that that veterinarian might actually have seen some of the brothers and sisters that your dog is going to be related to. So they're going to have a really good understanding of the health of that line that that breeder is using, and just ask them if they would recommend that breeder. If the veterinarian says yes, then you probably have a good breeder. You're more than welcome to do more research on that topic and, you know, dive as deep as you want to into making sure that you've got a healthy dog. I hope that this has been helpful. I hope that it's given, I don't know, some information about mini Aussies. I've never owned a mini Aussie or a toy Aussie, so I really basically had to do research online. So anyone that has a mini Aussie or a toy Aussie, please comment down below. Let some of us know kind of what the behavioral traits that you've seen in your Aussie is. I'm sure that a lot of people are going to be asking this question over and over again. So the more information we can get down in the comments, the better. And yeah, let's just help each other out, because I definitely don't know a lot about the topic. I just have what I could research. So anyone that can comment down below, please do so. If you want to give this video a thumbs up, you can always do that as well. I always appreciate that. And I will see you guys in my next video. Take care. Bye.